You're watching Channel 2 News coverage of Decision 2012.
It should be reasonable to have ballots for everybody.
Across Anchorage, voters are reeling, hundreds finding out their voting stations ran out of ballots and then scrambling to find another location to cast their votes. Good evening, everyone. It started out as a controversial election and now has escalated to an even more contentious process.
Across Anchorage, voting stations ran out of ballots, with literally hundreds of people scrambling to find a polling station where they could cast their votes.
Channel 2 was inundated with calls from people who told us they felt disenfranchised after going to several locations in search of the ballots, some waiting more than an hour.
Channel 2's Jason Lamb joins us now with a look at this process gone awry. Jason?
Ted, Maria, it was crazy out there. Imagine going to your polling place to find it was out of ballots, then told to go somewhere else, and that place was out of ballots, and then told to go to yet another place, and by then it was too late for some people to vote. This election night is unlike anything Anchorage has ever seen.
We're out of ballots, out of regular ballots.
April 3rd, 2012.
These are question ballots.
The day democracy devolved into chaos.
We're going to have you fill out the yellow envelope that proves that you're registered.
Reports from polling stations running out of ballots first came from Diamond High School.
You know, I think it's a load of phooey. You know, they should print off as many ballots as there are populace in Anchorage.
And then spread all over town.
They said they were out of ballots, which I voted here for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. I don't even know how long. They've never run out of ballots, ever.
To sites like Cladd Elementary.
The Huffman Fire Station. It's right on right across from cars.
Okay.
We just got a call. They have plenty of ballots.
Okay.
And one look at the crowded parking lot at the Huffman Fire Station could say it all.
As long as you're in line before 8 o'clock.
Okay, that's only 3 minutes away. So
I've got 6 minutes.
So we can't wait here and vote here?
We don't have no materials for you to vote.
I just want to make sure that I can vote.
I understand. I just talked to the administrator, and he said that he's out of all supplies.
So I don't know what to tell you.
The municipal clerk says the turnout for this election was unprecedented, with some precincts getting close to double the usual amount of voters. It seemed so odd that at one point she said it appeared that there were more than just Anchorage voters voting.
We have no idea how it's going to turn out.
Part of the confusion has come from an email sent from the campaign urging people to vote against the ordinance that would protect sexual orientation from discrimination in Anchorage. It said people could register to vote today and have their vote count.
It's not possible. I passed on the information that that was not what people were to do, so we think a lot of ballots have been eaten up by people who may not be registered voters. We don't know at this point, but it's just, they're huge numbers.
I've never seen this in 40 years of being here.
Just before 8 o'clock, it was clear some people would not make it to their second or even third alternate polling place in time, with not much of an explanation from the clerk's office.
We've been driving, everybody's been driving ballots and question envelopes all over town.
Election night might be over.
Okay, the polls are now closed at this precinct. Thank you.
But it looks like the chaos is just getting started. Now, we talked with Jim Minery tonight with the No on 5 campaign, who says any inference that he tried to bring down this election is just desperate sounding. He said that would be a, quote, pretty idiotic strategy. Because of tonight's ballot shortage, many people filled out so-called questioned ballots. Those involve a lot more paperwork, and while those votes will be counted, the municipal clerk says it's anybody's guess as to how long that could take. I just got off the phone with her. She sounds very exasperated. She says she has no idea when her staff will be done sorting this mess out tonight.
Geez, what a frustrating night for so many voters.
And we were getting lots, literally dozens and dozens of calls. People were very frustrated. So this won't be the last we'll hear of this, I'm sure. Thanks, Jason.
I was enraged that we couldn't, where in America our vote is the basis of our society, could not contrive a method for this person to cast her ballot.
And that says a lot, coming from this election worker.
I was the precinct leader at the St. Anthony's Church here.
I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Andy Otto says he had to fill out a sample ballot
Blue piece of paper
at his polling place.
They had a whole stack of them, and I'm like, well, how do I know my vote's going to count? Oh, it'll count. We'll take care of it. It'll count.
And he's not the only one.
To have them not be prepared
I mean, imagine going to McDonald's and having them not have your food, whatever. I mean, you know, I just felt like this is not right.
Sunset Hills. Okay, I'll let them know.
A day full of outrage.
I think that this should be thrown out.
Everything you need is Sunset Hills right across the street.
Following the night, Connie says democracy fell short.
Yes.
It was an atrocity. Maybe that's a little excessive, but in America, where we do vote, it was an atrocity.
Okay, the polls are now closed.
Literally when we place ballots.
The city clerk, Barbara Gruenstein, says her office did its job, making sure 142,000 ballots were printed. All different kinds of ballots. On election night, only one of those ballot types, comprising a fraction of the total ballots, how big we don't know, ran out at some locations. The clerk says other voting locations like UAA or the airport had extra ballots by the end of the night.
We didn't run out. We have some. It's just that they weren't at the right places to be. You know, people used more of them than we expected they would, but other places still had some left over.
As long as you're in line before 8 o'clock.
That led election workers to send voters to other voting locations.
So we can't wait here and vote here? We don't have no materials for you to vote.
Thursday, the city clerk says that election workers should have told voters to stay put and wait for more ballots to arrive.
The election workers did a great job dealing with a really unforeseen situation. So we would prefer that they had stayed there, but I'm not going to second-guess an election worker at 3 minutes to 8 p.m.
When voters crisscrossed the city looking for ballots, the city clerk says that compounded the problem. Because when voters cast ballots in a polling place that isn't their own, they have to use a special questioned ballot with a special envelope, something the city says they also ran short of in some places on election night.
I do know that normally we send out 25 question envelopes to most precincts, and we have extras come back. This time, it appears that on average are between 30 and 150 question ballots cast at most precincts.
With still a lot of questions out there, the clerk says one thing is for sure.
Is this the most hectic time you've experienced in your time as clerk?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Mission before making a decision on whether to hire an independent special counsel to look into why the ballot shortage happened.
I would prefer to wait till after our Friday work session.
All right, are we ready to vote now? Please vote. 4 to 7.
Only 4 of the 11 assembly members voted for the idea originally proposed by the ACLU.
That's unacceptable to me. I mean, say what you will about the ACLU, but I'm very excited that at least someone is standing up for Anchorage residents. Something needs to be done.
Carly Kay, a registered Anchorage voter for 4 years, says she got this letter in the mail Tuesday from the city clerk's office.
The Anchorage Election Commission was unable to count your ballot because you missed the March 4th, 2012 voter registration deadline.
Carly admits she recently moved and she might have missed the deadline to re-register to vote, but she says she was already registered as a voter at her old Anchorage home and that her vote should count.
I am incredibly angry. Voting is something really important to me. It's been drilled into me since I was a kid that that's my right, and that's something you should do. It's civic duty. And here I went and took the time to exercise that duty, and it's being ignored.
It seems the frustration at the ballot box still lingers 1 week later. There. And Carly says to make matters worse, along with her letter saying her vote wouldn't count, she says another voter's letter was stuck to her envelope when she got it today. So that person doesn't know right now that their vote doesn't count. The city says any voter can challenge the city's decision to reject their vote at the upcoming election canvass this Friday, Friday the 13th. Mike, Maria.
And so far there's been a lot of bad luck in this election.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. Channel 2's Jason Lamb with an update tonight.
City Clerk Barbara Gruenstein admitted she made some mistakes, like not having more ballots ready to go at the polling places on Election Day in advance of a highly controversial gay rights initiative that could have driven more voters to the polls.
I mean, did you weigh the factor of the hot button issue?
I knew it was going to be high, but I did not get into the level of detail that at this point I wish I had.
Other assembly members raised concerns first highlighted by Channel 2 this week.
There was a report that was done on Channel 2 about an individual who had their vote rejected.
The Anchorage Election Commission was unable to count your ballot because you missed the March 4th, 2012 voter registration deadline.
This voter says even though she missed the registration deadline to file at her new address, she was already registered to vote at her old Anchorage address, so she should have been able to cast a ballot.
That certainly can happen, which is probably the purpose of the canvass, where any person can come and ask that their vote be counted or not.
Barbara Mischler?
Here.
It might have gone down as the quickest city meeting ever conducted. 1:30 p.m.
I invite anyone who wants to appeal in writing to challenge a voting decision. Is there anyone present that would like to?
No one showed on time. Out of the 609 votes thrown out from the frenzied April 3rd election, this was the one chance for people to appeal the city's decision on their thrown-out vote. 1:32 p.m.
Madam Chairman, I think our work is done. I move that we adjourn.
That adjournment was too soon for Carly Kay, who arrived just 5 minutes late. 1:35 p.m.
What time is it? Like, what, 1:35, something like that? So apparently I needed to be here 5 minutes earlier.
We first told you about Carly Kay last week when she got a letter in the mail saying her vote was not counted in the election. Kay admits that she had recently moved and missed the 30-day deadline to register, but because she had moved from an Anchorage address and was already registered there, she said her vote should count. But with the commission adjourned, Kay lost her chance to appeal.
This is just, I don't even know what to say at this point.
Or so we thought.
Excuse me, we're going to reconvene here, so if you guys could move aside so we can come in.
1:40 p.m.
We would love to take a look at your vote. If you can send us in writing, if you can write down this information so that we can take a look at it.
Kay was the only person to show up to challenge the commission's decision on her vote.
I expect to see...
But at Anchorage Assembly chambers,
The idea here is to go ahead and...
that changed too.
Never has there been so many glaring levels of incompetence.
5:45 p.m.
I will actively work to remove any assembly person who does not vote to get a private investigation to follow up with this election because they're disrespecting our duties, our rights to vote.
The assembly seemed to get the message from the public. Hire an independent investigator now.
We understand the concern about time passing. And, we're going to get this investigation going as quickly as we can.
The assembly says the results will be important. Things just take time. By the way, Kay's vote was counted earlier today after originally being thrown out. You may have noticed Assemblyman Ernie Hall is now Assembly Chair, so he's going to be in charge of overseeing any election investigations. Off camera, I congratulated him on his new position, and he jokingly told me, congratulations or my condolences. Mike, Maria?
Has something to tackle right away.
Very good point. All right,
thanks, Jason. Channel 2's Jason Lamb reporting.
You have another chance today to weigh in on April's balloting. The Anchorage Election Commission will hold another round of meetings this afternoon. On Saturday, the commission began holding hearings at the Lusac Library after receiving hundreds of emails from voters. Testimony resumes this afternoon at 4 and will run until 7:30 tonight. Assembly Chair Ernie Hall says a third party will continue to investigate what went wrong.
With that, we will be covering our bases in regards to third-party investigation of the election, as well as a third-party opinion in regards to what we should give consideration to in deciding certification.
The last thing. The Election Commission is urging those who can't make today's hearing to speak out via email. You can find the address on our website, KTUU.com. Look for this story.
The Anchorage Assembly has paved the way for an independent review of the city's April election. Assembly Chair Ernie Hall told Channel 2 tonight the Assembly unanimously approved a contract to hire retired Anchorage Superior Court Judge Dan Hensley to investigate.
Let me put it this way. If I was in the situation that Barbara was in with what's been going on, I would probably have had a real inclination to do the same thing myself.
Reaction to the news that City Clerk Barbara Gruenstein, the woman in charge of the department that runs city elections, will be resigning at the end of the month. Good evening, everyone. Anchorage Assembly Chair Ernie Hall made that announcement today. Gruenstein's resignation comes after that troubled Anchorage election back in April, when more than half of the polling places ran out of ballots. Channel 2's Jason Lamb joins us tonight with a reaction. Jason?
Mike, Gruenstein works for the Assembly, and in her resignation letter, she says the problems on election night have caused the Assembly to doubt whether she can continue to serve. At Assembly Chair Ernie Hall's request, Gruenstein agreed to stay on until the end of June to help with the transition to a new clerk. Gruenstein and her staff had come under intense scrutiny by the Anchorage Assembly, who wanted to know why they didn't prepare for a projected high voter turnout on the April 3rd election night. The Assembly had already fired Gruenstein's deputy clerk, Jacqueline Duke, earlier this month. Hall says Gruenstein tendered her resignation yesterday.
It wasn't something that I celebrated. Long relationship with Barbara. She's had a long relationship with this body, and when I shared it with the body last night, you know, it was more acceptance. Would be the best way I could put it.
Channel 2's Steve McDonald spoke with Gruenstein on the phone this afternoon. She says she feels good about her decision to resign. We asked her if she was pressured to resign. She said she wouldn't comment on that, only that the clerk serves at the pleasure of the Assembly. Mike?
All right, Channel 2's Jason Lamb reporting tonight. Thanks. Well, a new report says complacency and a hands-off attitude at the Anchorage Clerk's office caused a lot of the problems in April's muni election, namely more than half of the polling places in Anchorage running out of ballots. Channel 2's Jason Lamb has been going over that report today. And Jason, what did you find out?
Well, Mike, the botched city election cost both the city clerk and deputy clerk their jobs. And the report says last April basically amounted to a perfect storm of miscommunication, inexperience, and high voter turnout that caused voting precincts to run out of ballots, sending some voters away. The 9-page report says the city clerk, who's responsible for running elections, exercised a hands-off management strategy, delegating much of the details of preparing for the election to Deputy City Clerk Jacqueline Duke, who only had 2 years' worth of experience running elections, neither of which were particularly contentious. Duke told the Investigator, "I did the best I could based on my experience."
As long as you're in line before 8 o'clock.
On election night, more than half of the city's polling places ran out of ballots. The report continues to point the finger at then City Clerk Barbara Gruenstein's lack of supervision in the election, saying she did not have a working knowledge of the details involved in preparing for an election and had not participated in any meaningful way in election planning or execution in several years, something Anchorage Assembly Chair Ernie Hall, Gruenstein's boss, said he didn't realize initially.
I was surprised by that to a degree. I felt that Barbara had more involvement than apparently Judge Hensley felt that she did.
The report also says around 2 o'clock on Election Day, it became clear there would be inevitable ballot shortages all around town. But no one in the clerk's office did anything to prevent shortages from happening in other precincts. The report says this lack of foresight proved fatal to the rest of the day. The report recommends the city get rid of hands-off management in the clerk's office. Assembly Chair Ernie Hall has already accepted Gruenstein's resignation. It says election workers need to be trained on what to do when polls run out of ballots, and the Assembly should occasionally review the performance of clerk's office employees. The only question now, when will these new suggestions be put into law? We contacted former Deputy Clerk Jacqueline Duke today, but she declined to give us any reaction to the report. I spoke with former Clerk Barbara Gruenstein earlier today. She said she hadn't seen the report yet, so I sent it to her, and we have not heard back from her. You can read the full 9-page report on our website, KTUU.com. Today, the new city clerk had a message for people who had concerns with how this city ran this April's election. She says they need to pitch in next year.
We need them to be precinct workers, to work with us, making sure that we don't have problems with our next election, and the public helps the municipality make sure that that happens.
A few weeks ago, an independent attorney released a series of recommendations for the city to take up to improve next year's election.